Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Steven here with Team Euphoric, and this is day 19 of the 80 Days to Your Dream Body course. Today's protein source is going to be rabbit, and today is going to be a shoulders and arms training routine. And the theme for today's workout is going to be assisted PNF stretching. So right now, I'm going to be demonstrating some more assisted PNF stretches. Now let's get started. And while we are resting, let's continue with our PNF demonstration in side lying position. Now that we have done the hip extensors, it is time to stretch the hip flexors. When we are stretching the hip flexors first, we want to start with the deep hip flexors. When we're doing the deep hip flexors, we want a little bit of slack in the knee. So we don't want the knee bent. We're going to want the knee a little bit straighter. But what we would do for this one right over here is there's a couple options with the hand positioning. We could either stabilize at the ilium up top, or we could stabilize at the sacrum. Find which one is more comfortable for you. You can also just rest your forearm in there. But for myself, the way that I would like to do this one is I would like to go. I would have one hand underneath the femur, and then what I would do is just place one hand at the a little bit of an oblique angle. So it's not right on the sacrum, not right on the ilium, little bit on an angle. And then from this position, what I would do is I would take them into hip extension, and I would just use my bicep to hug the lower limb up against my body. From here, I would just go into hip extension to stretch the hip flexors. And then there's a few different options. We could just go straight into hip extension. And then as we did with when we were stretching the hip extensors, we could change the angle. So if we wanted to, we could start to go up a little bit, go up into abduction, and then we could stretch the hip flexors with a little bit of abduction. This is going to target more of the medial compartment of the hip flexors. And then we could even go up a little bit higher if that is comfortable for them. But with regard to the PNF, once we take them into extension, we would instruct them drive your knee forward. They would inhale, bring the knee forward to contract, and then on the exhale, we would lean and pull away to get a nice stretch in the hip flexors. Same thing with if we are doing it at an angle. At an angle, we would just instruct the patient, inhale, push your knee forward, they would go, and then on the exhale, relax, and then we would just lean away and move backward to get a nice stretch in more of the medial compartment of the hip flexors. When we are targeting the hip flexors, we are specifically going to be targeting the iliopsoas, so the psoas major and the iliacus. We're also going to be targeting the rectus femoris. When we are doing the rectus femoris with the knee extended, we're primarily going to be targeting the proximal fibers of the rectus femoris because the rectus femoris, it attaches at the anterior inferior iliac spine and to the patella. So if we have a little bit of slack at the knee, what's going to happen is we're going to get more of the stretch at the proximal fibers as opposed to the distal. And with regard to some other muscles that will be involved, we will also be getting a little bit of TFL pectineus and adductor longus and brevis. If you recall, TFL is one of your hip flexors, medial rotators, and abductors. So by taking them into an extension, we are going to be stretching one of the actions of that muscle. And then some other muscles that will be involved to a lesser extent, not quite, but just a little bit. We will be getting a little bit of stretch in the gracilis, also the anterior fibers of the adductor magnus, and the anterior fibers of both the gluteus medius and minimus. But that is what we are stretching in this position. Rest period is up. Time for set number 2. That was just a tiny taste of what can be found in my members only section. If you enjoyed it, become a member for only $5 a month to get access to hundreds of member only videos.